my name's Amena. I'm gonna go over this introduction so you guys get to hear twice. I've been working at Lone Star for over 5 years. I started working off in the disability service department, and then last year I moved to the TLC. Super lucky, love it so much. And I was part of the Lone Star College alumni, yeah. And I was also part of the Honors College Leadership Program here. I moved to UH, and I recently finished, and I got my Bachelor's of Science there in Psychology and a minor in Health Communications. I'm currently applying to get my PhD in Clinical Psych. So it's fun.
Okay. It's 11:01, so if you're ready, we can start. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. The College-CyFair Diversity Committee presents the double-edged sword of modesty and liberation, how oppression is not what you wear, by Amena Alhassan. This presentation will focus on the definition of modesty, liberation, and oppression, along with explaining how the concept of the hijab has been misconstrued and the idea that less clothing means more freedom or more clothing means modesty is something that is used to paint a look of oppression and other sides of political disagreement. Amena is 21 years old. I don't want to be too repetitive. Is a Muslim American, Arab American who graduated again from U of H with an honors BS in psychology and a minor in health communications. Again, she's worked at Lone Star College for several years, Lone Star College-CyFair. She plans to again pursue her PhD in clinical psych and currently works in 3 different research labs. Ooh, I'm blown away by that. She's still doing this presentation. It's made time to do this for us. Again, working in 3 different research labs as a research assistant, while also working again at a teaching and learning center here at the Lone Star College-CyFair campus. Her passions include art, psych, writing, music, and Halloween. So without further ado, please help me welcome Ms. Amena Alhassan.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I know we've had like a really fun time to talk. So thank you, Jennifer, for the introduction. Today we're going to be discussing the double-edged sword of modesty and liberation and how oppression is not what you wear. So I already gave you guys a wonderful introduction, but that's a little drawing of me. And let's start off with our objectives. And so today we're going to discuss the definitions of modesty, liberation, and oppression. We're going to look at the definition of hijab and the different versions of it, some light history, a little bit of a religious perspective, and then we're going to have the visual representation of modesty, liberation, and oppression. So definitions and images of the first word, modesty. What does modesty mean to you? Any comments, suggestions, remarks?
Conservative, maybe shy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyone else?
Yeah, like bashful came to mind, like, you know, the like concealing a little bit. Yeah.
So the definitions for modesty, there's 3. Placing a moderate estimate on one's abilities or worth, which is neither bold nor self-asserting, and tending towards diffidence, arising from a characteristic of a modest nature, or observing the proprieties of dress and behavior. Now, notice how this isn't targeted towards a specific demographic. Now, if we look at the images, what does it target?
Women.
Is it inclusive or is it just about women? You have how they discuss their attire, their clothing. You even have those images that I used to see when I was younger, where they talk about the length of your skirt and the names associated with it. And some of those names are very derogatory. And as someone who grew up wearing hijab since I was 9, so it's been over a decade, I never understood why people would somehow assume that your respect or your worth, for women specifically, is tied to what you wear. Especially when there are some people who decide to wear what they want, and they are some of the kindest, sweetest, most respectful people themselves. Now, if we look at the other definition,
Oh, sorry.
after what those images say to you, if we look at the other definition, liberation. What does liberation mean to you? Freedom.
Freedom.
Breaking free. Freedom isn't just for one person. Freedom isn't just for one group, one demographic. And we see that in the definitions. The act of liberating, state of being liberated, a movement seeking equal rights and status for a group. So once again, it doesn't target a specific demographic like the other definition for modesty. But when you see the images, you see that it's very inclusive. It has groups of people. It has different meanings, words. Now, when you see these images, what do they say to you?
Breaking free from something.
Breaking
Yeah.
free from something. Yeah. And that's not what one person goes through. That's what anybody and everybody can go through, regardless of your age, your sexual orientation, your religion, your race, your ethnicity. And so noticing how there's already a difference between liberation and modesty when it comes to modesty being targeted towards women. You are responsible for what you wear. You need to do this. You need to do this. Growing up as young women, growing up as girls in this society, when you're told that your materialistic item is what defines your worth, your entity, your respect, it can be very altering towards your own body image, what you accept, what you don't accept. Whereas liberation is just for all. Now, oppression. What does oppression mean to you? What do you think of when you hear the word oppression?
Control.
Yeah.
What I hear is lack of choice.
Mm.
And essentially that is stripped away from you. You don't have that choice anymore. And in the definition, it's unjust or cruel exercise of authority or power, something that oppresses, especially in being an unjust or excessive exercise of power, or a sense of being weighed down in body or mind. Once again, none of these definitions are targeted towards a specific demographic, but you've seen already in the images, one is targeted towards women, one is for all, and with oppression, it's also for all. It's inclusive. Anybody can feel oppressed, anybody can be oppressed at any moment, unfortunately. And so these images that you see, what do they say to you?
Like breaking the chains, a lot of it. Yeah, moving out of something. Once again, the weighing down really went with me.
And so with all these three terms, something that I had grown up hearing was wearing a hijab is oppressive. You're oppressed. And you shouldn't be wearing it. You're here, you should be liberated, you should be free. And growing up young, that made me feel very off, as though what I decided to wear or sorry, you have a question?
Who is telling you this?
Many people. When I would walk when I was younger, I remember when I first started wearing it, I was 9. I was 10 years old walking in the metro at DC with my brothers. Small child. I didn't grow much taller, but like small child wearing a hijab and getting the dirtiest looks from people. Walking around, people telling me that like you're in a free country, you don't have to wear that anymore. And I was like, why do you feel so entitled to see my hair if I can have one? And so,
I might stop wearing one.
and so I would recommend the jersey materials. They're wonderful. And so growing up hearing that, growing up seeing media represent the pretty girls as the ones with their hair out with this, it always made me feel a little off because I was just like, okay, am I doing something wrong? Am I not fitting in? Am I not normal? And then dealing with that perspective, but also dealing with the Islamic community perspective, where my personal experience as a hijabi is I was never good enough. There was always one person to say, like, your clothes are too short, your clothes are too tight, your clothes are this, and I'd be wearing like a triple XL shirt, and they'd still find something. And so when you have no support from outside of your community, you have no support from inside of your community, you feel alone. You don't feel that connection with anybody. You don't know if you're going to talk to somebody and they're going to be like, oh, like you're in a free country, take it off. You don't have to wear it anymore. Or why are you wearing it if you're not going to wear it properly? Your hair is showing, you're wearing makeup, your clothes are too tight, don't wear it anymore. And so it's kind of a lose-lose situation. And this goes for all women. When you grow up, I know I grew up in different schools, different areas, and they would always tell you, fingertip length. When you bend down, make sure you squat, make sure your shoulders are covered, make sure when you talk to people, you're not laughing too loud, you're not being too this, you don't want to get the wrong idea. You don't want to make somebody think that you like them. Don't smile too much. So every single action you do has just been like construed down to your materialistic clothing. And so that is something that I felt was an issue. Now, the definition of hijab comes from the word al-satr, which means veiling oneself or something. And it's stated in the Descendant Out of Dictionary that veiling something means to hide it from view or conceal it. And so hijab wasn't just associated with Islam. It's associated with a lot of different cultures. It's just concealing yourself. The term hijab means conceal. And so that isn't just with women, that isn't just with men, that's with everybody. Your hijab could be anything from when you walk out and you decide not to go topless, you're covering yourself. You have that sort of thing. When you walk into a business conference and you decide to wear a suit instead of your PJs or a nightgown, you're concealing yourself. You're concealing that part of yourself. And so these little drawings are actually different versions and styles that I drew of the hijab. And then I'm going to show you some different versions of hijabs. So these right here are the very common ones. You have the dupatta, which is the long garments and clothing. You'll see most of these girls will make skirts and cardigans, and like their scarf is like covering over their chest. So a lot of that can either be associated with culture, or it can be associated to their own comforts, their own beliefs, their own levels. And you can even see this very common with a lot of Christian women, with a lot of Jewish women. They might not wear like the head covering, but they'll have longer skirts. They'll have this. I remember in Lone Star a couple years ago, we'd always have these like wonderful Mormon like group just stand out there, and I would befriend them. And these girls would be wearing long skirts. They'd have their cardigans over. They'd have all this. They were Muslim. They wouldn't necessarily call it a hijab. And yet, when they walk out like that, people are saying, look at that, they're being modest. But when I walk out and I decide to wear that, people are saying, you're too oppressive. It's too much. Even if I specifically wanted to wear it. You have the chador, which is very found, it's commonly found like in Iran and Iraq, and that's like the abaya, we also call it like an abaya. It's like a cloak sort of like thing. It's mostly black, and it just kind of conceals you. It's really cool because I used to like hide snacks in there when I was young. The burqa covers your entire face, and so none of it shows, and it's not one specific color. You can do many colors. So many people have different ones. There's a lot that's associated with culture or where you're at. The hijab is what covers your hair, your arms, your legs, your chest, and there's so many different styles and ways that people wear it. For instance, I prefer to wear it like a shawl, super easy, no pins required. I've had friends and cousins who wear it like with like 7 pins, and I don't know how they do it, but they do it amazingly. And the niqab is where only your eyes show. Now, niqabs aren't just black. Your attire isn't just black. It goes in different forms and ranges. There's even a whole company that makes like beautiful satin ones. Wonderful. Now, some light history about the hijab is, first of all, hijab existed so much more before religion. And the Code of Hammurabi, the first king of Babylon, actually had it where bondmaids weren't allowed to wear it, and only honorable women could wear it. They had associated your status with how much you could cover up. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I see it still today. I see it still happening today where people put the status of a woman on how she dresses. And it hurts because I want people to feel comfortable as they are, as they please, and that they're not harming them. In the Larousse Encyclopedia, ancient Greek women used to conceal their faces with parts of their dress or a special veil, and then Roman women used to wear the long apparel, like the abaya, similar, that just cloaked all over them. And then in Sparta, if you were unmarried, you would appear unveiled, but once you got married, you would cover your head. Except in the markets, regardless of your marriage status, you would cover up fully and cover your face. And in Jahiliyyah, the free Arab women refrained from unveiling themselves because back then, society put an indication on your honorability and your status based on how much you were concealed. Now, don't get me wrong. I am proud of what I wear, and I'm proud of how I wear it, but I'm also human. And I also know that my experiences in growing up through this, they weren't made easy. Now, whether it was because I was in a Western society, whether it was because I grew up never feeling like I fit into any of the beauty standards, the world standards, and in Texas, especially growing up, having to like find these clothes, having to like layer, having to do this, it gets extremely hard because you're deciding whether you want to look good or you want to mount. And from a religious perspective, I started wearing it when I was 9. You're supposed to start essentially when you start your menstruation cycle or you're 13. With all religion, there are essentially guidelines. There are rules, there's obligatory things. But as humans, we have free will. For those who believe in higher power, we don't essentially have that sort of like religious police. Like God doesn't send down angels every single time you make a mistake. Just like if you run a red light, a cop will come after you. But if your hijab's showing this, if you decide to like not fast, if you decide to do this, that's something you deal with after. That's the whole concept of the afterlife. That's the whole concept of, faith, is you put that faith in God. It might not be something you can see, it might not be something you can hear or exactly touch. You just put that trust. You go, okay, I believe in this, and I think this is the best thing for me, so I'm going to do it. Now, from a religious perspective, a lot of people tend to emphasize that hijab is just for women. It's not. Hijab is for men and women. And I loved saying that every time because I have 5 brothers. And for men, actually, there's a whole way with how short their clothes can be, whether their chests can be out. There's some who like you can't show their chest. There's some who they cover their belly button. And so it's very funny when I see this because a lot of people tend to immediately just go after women. They're like, your hair's showing, wearing too much makeup, your hijab needs to be fixed, don't do this. But then guys will go out in like muscle tanks and they'll be like, oh my God, he's doing great, perfect. And so Islamically, there's a surah al-Nur, and which means light. And there's 2 verses there, and I won't go into detail with them because when it comes to translating religious script, it's extremely complex. And Arabic is one of the hardest languages to translate, that there are scholars who spend their entire life dedicated towards translating and making interpretations. And there's so many differences because with Arabic, we have accents, harakat. You change one, you can change the entirety. And so there are 2 verses there that emphasize how modesty is for men and for women. Men and women are both told to lower their gaze. They're both told to cover themselves properly. They're both told to do this. As someone who is a firm believer, I also believe that we are given free will. I also believe that God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the person who judges. So I've never put myself in a position to ever talk down on somebody or to ever belittle them just because they might not be going through their belief system the same way I am. And that is something that I kind of want to spread. I have nothing against people who decide to wear what they want, who decide to do what they want. I have an issue with using these terms like liberation, oppression, modesty in the wrong context. Saying that somebody's oppressed for wearing more is wrong. Saying they're oppressed if they're forced to wear more is different. Because think of it this way, when you apply for your job here at Lone Star, you have people who have to wear their polos, you have people who have to wear business clothes, they can't wear jeans. I know in our office, we can't wear jeans unless it's Friday. Now, I don't like jeans, so it works for me. And I knew that when I signed up. When I went to my interview and I was told, I couldn't exactly go to Sarah and be like, you're pressing me because I can't wear pajamas because I signed up for it. Yeah. Now it would be different if they were like, oh, regardless of, business attire, we want you to wear some like revealing clothing, even though it benefits us in no way. This is something that'll protect you. That's when I could have been like, okay, it's oppressive. But like you sign up to work in an oil rig, you're gonna wear flame retardant clothes. If you try to come in with some flammable material, they're gonna tell you get out. When you're doing construction, you have to wear a hard hat. You might not like it. It might bother you, might cause like a headache, but it's better than a hammer falling on your head. Now, if they told you like, oh, take off your hijab and put a hard hat on, that's when you could be like, no, I think this is fine because I can tuck it in. Or you work on a way to make it safe. For nurses, doctors, a lot of them, when they have to wear their surgical masks, I have friends who are hijabis and they're nurses and they wear it's like a one piece, it's the most unattractive thing ever. And it like tucks in and then they'll put their head cap, they'll put it all, but it's tucked in. So they're still keeping their propriety. It would be oppressive if a doctor came up and was like, no, we need your hair out so that you could put a mask over. Because then they'd be like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm staying safe, I'm being fine. And this goes for both ways. When I first came into Lone Star, I was 17. It was like the first time I was around people who weren't all Muslim or all like part of my culture. Because I was homeschooled for majority and the rest was in Islamic private schools. And I remember being fully covered up, seeing all these girls and guys wear shorts and t-shirts in Texas. I was like, man, am I jealous. But I also remember seeing them and I was like, this is so cool, seeing so many different people express themselves. I was like, I love it. Nobody's hurting anybody. Obviously, you can't walk into a chem lab with shorts, whether you're a guy or a girl, because if you drop acid on yourself, good luck. But I remember walking next to this girl and she was talking about a friend of mine who, she wears revealing clothes. Good for her. She can do what she wants. And she was talking bad about her. She was like, she has no respect for herself. Her clothes are too short. Look at what she posted. Her chest is revealed and this. And I looked at her and I was like, you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt. If we're going by that mentality, I could look down upon you because I'm fully covered, but I don't. Are you comfortable wearing what you wear? Has it put anybody else in harm? Did you choose this outfit? Are you forced to wear it? Are you allowed to wear it? Yeah. So why would I, with my beliefs, be like, you're doing something wrong because of what I believe? And the issue is people don't see it like that sometimes. People see it as maybe they're trying to guide you. Maybe they firmly believe in it so much that they're like, oh, I want to help you, I want to save you from this. But there are ways to go about it. I'm never going to look at somebody and be like, oh, I believe in hijab and it's really good and it protects you in this, so you're doing wrong. No, if I truly wanted to guide somebody as adults, I would let them ask. Because I get questions. I get people asking, well, why do you wear this? Why do you do this? Does it help? I'm like, it protects you in winter. My ears are never cold. It's awesome. Great. I honestly recommend it for everybody. It's the first thing that I say to people whenever they're cold and they're covering their ears. I'm like, have you tried hijabs? They're great. And so it's very heartbreaking when I see people put down others for what they wear or how they dress. And the reason being is, for the longest time, I grew up thinking that, the more you wear, the more protected you are. And then reality hits in, and you see girls of all ages, all demographics, boys, all this, regardless of what they wear, they go through traumatic experiences. And it's unfortunate. It's because of that sort of weight on your attire that supposedly the more you wear, the more protected you are. It neglects those who were wearing more. It neglects those who weren't wearing more. It puts fault at those who simply were just existing, for going through traumatic things. Twisted people will do twisted things no matter what. And that's not something you can change by your attire. What you can change is how you speak on it, how you show yourself. For me, modesty is confidence. When people ask me, and because a majority of this discussion is opinion and research and experience-based rather than the definitions being researched, I can speak for myself. I can speak for me as a hijabi. I can speak for myself as an Arab American woman. My experiences might not be the same as others. There are people who have gone through worse. There are people who've gone through better, who've never ever considered, it being an issue or bother. For me, though, I know that growing up in a world where you're kind of brought down for what you wear, your worth is tied to what you wear, it can be very degrading. It can be very at fault sometimes, because you walk around and you go, maybe if I wasn't wearing this, maybe if I, didn't wear makeup, maybe if I didn't do this. So I want to strip away the power of that and put the power of, what are your values? What are your morals? Okay. How does that align with wherever you're trying to go, what you're trying to be? If you walk into a Roman cathedral and they ask you to cover up, you're willingly walking in there, abide by the rules. If you're walking into a Buddhist beach, you can't go, why is everybody doing this? You willingly walked in there. Now, if somebody dragged you in there, if somebody drags you in a Roman cathedral, you could go and say, like, oh, I didn't even want to be here. That's oppressive. Now, liberation and modesty and oppression, none of this is tied to your material. Nothing is tied to your clothing. Modesty is confidence. It is power. It is how you feel comfortable. You might feel modest at home in your pajamas, but if you walk into your office in pajamas, you won't feel as modest. You might feel modest in Halloween wearing full zombie makeup, but if you walk into a law firm with that, you're going to get sent to a psych ward. And you might feel oppressed for something, but is it oppression or is it annoyance? It can be very frustrating and annoying to wear certain things for certain demographics, to put on heels and a pantsuit and have to walk across campus. It's annoying, but it's not oppressive. Oppressive would be if I was told I need to wear business casual and I put on a suit and they go, nope, we want you to wear a pantsuit. We want you to wear a mini skirt. That's what we did. That would be oppressive because I'm like, okay, pantsuit, business skirt, same thing. I just feel more comfortable with my legs covered. There might be somebody who doesn't, and they're allowed to do that. And so it's about stripping the power of these words and placing them in case by case basis rather than just one specific demographic. Because by doing that, what we will do is we will allow the voices of those who truly feel oppressed or who truly feel liberated, who truly feel modest in their own sense, rather than taking a group of people, placing them in a subcategory and going, that's how it is, and you just got to tough it up. And thank you, everybody. Is there any questions?
Woo!
I'm gonna clap. I have a question. What do you, for people who are maybe less informed to the differences, the cultures of different things, what would you say, and this will just be your opinion, but what would you say is the least offensive way to inquire? Like if I truly do want to inquire about something to learn and understand and respect, what's the best way to be like, hey, I have a question about your hijab? Like, what's the best way to not offend while wanting to learn?
So my first rule is for kids, no question, it's ever not allowed to ask if kids are kids. With adults, it's what can you Google that will give you a response that is either clear, and if you're still confused, you can bring it up, because then at least you did your research. Because walking up and going like, do you shower with your hijab on? This is very much like, I will give you a funny answer. I'm not gonna give you a serious one. I'll tell you, yeah, we do laundry, but if you ask and you go like, hey, what age did you start wearing it? Or like, why do you wear it? I'll first tell you like, hey, okay, this is gonna be my opinion. This is why I wear it. This is why I've done it. Because that's something when you search it up, it'll give you maybe like the religious facts, and even mention that, where if you were to search up like, oh, can your parents see their hijab on? And Google says like, no, they can't. And you go like, hey, I Googled this and this came up. Is that true? Like, that's a little bit better than walking up and asking a question that if you clearly just type into Google, it'll give you something. And the rest is honestly very opinion based. I'm very open with all questions are allowed, as long as it's not something I will give you a funny answer to. That's just me. There's some people, I had a friend who, some guy walked up to her here on campus and asked her if she had ears under her hijab. And that was so funny, because I was like, you're a better person than I am, because I would have been like, what? Sorry, I can hear you. No, we have clip-ons. And so that would have been something that like, okay, please educate yourself. But I've had people who walk up and they go like, oh, is there a specific style you have to wear it? Or, what about people who wear their turbans? Is that like allowed? Because I've heard people, have to wear niqabs or this. And I was like, that's a preference. It's a very big preference on how you feel comfortable, what you do. And again, based on who you ask, there will be some people who tell you the proper way to wear it is fully covered, concealed. I have aunts of mine who consider they must cover their chin. Me, I won't do that. But I know some will prefer to wear gloves. Some have even pushed the hijab as far as like they won't do their nails, they don't do any makeup in this, and that's their preference in whatever it is. So if you're ever confused or concerned, or you're actually just curious and you've gotten different answers, you can even phrase that. If you come up to me and go like, hey, this one girl told me like you have to start wearing it at 9, if you don't, you're going to hell. Then I'll be like, okay, well, this is what I know, this is this. And then I'll even give you like sources. I'll be like, hey, well, I believe in a specific scholar. This scholar says this. It might be different from what other people say. I know I have friends who like they've done the research and they think that hijab is not obligatory. And that's for them. That's for them to choose, and they'll give you that response. I do know that with religion, you could grow up in a household with the same people, same upbringing, same religion, and still have different beliefs. I have 5 brothers in my family, and we all grew up with like about Shia, Islam, and I have different beliefs from them. I have different opinions on this, different interpretations, because once again, it is an interpretation. You go, okay, wait, this is what I believe God would allow, and it might be different from what somebody else says. Any other questions?
I'm curious, that other events that we've had, I've talked about this feeling of assimilation that seems to be happening more and more now. And what I mean by that is where you have maybe Black Americans or Hispanic Americans who are coming into America and they are almost denouncing what would be considered part of their culture to assimilate to what is considered American. Do you see that with your own cultures where they, a group is in America and they tell their children, no more, we are not Muslim, we're not from there, we are American, take everything off, we're not doing that anymore. Do you see that in your culture at all?
My own upbringing, no. My parents were very firm with your Muslims first, and very, very firm with that. Because they don't consider whatever this world can do compared to God. But I know that there are some people who, for instance, when political issues were going on and people were afraid to wear the hijab, their parents were like, just take it off. My parents were like, don't. And I was like, okay. It was like, I feel like it's just gonna scare people, but that's not me. And so there are some people that do that. And I think it just really depends on their culture, their upbringing. You don't find that very common with Arabs. Arabs are very, from my experience of what I've seen, Arabs are very, very thorough with keeping that religious part and that culture, because the culture in like Arab communities is very like Islamic. And so when you go to these areas, like I'm from Arab, when you go to Arab, most of the cities except like Baghdad, Erbil, it's very common to even wear the abaya. And so most people who aren't Muslim, like live in Baghdad or they live in different areas, they'll still kind of like wear that religious garment. So I feel like my generation, yeah, it's very common for people to start assimilating, but I think from my own perspective and knowledge of what I've done, a lot of it is coming from the feeling of no representation and the abuse that comes from this world when it comes to religion and all of this. And growing up in a Western society, as men, it's not very prone to see who's Muslim or not unless they're skin tone, and then people just assume, or if they have a beard. And it's even common where Sikhs are mistaken for Muslim because of their head covering. Whereas with women, if you wear the hijab, you're immediately known as Muslim, regardless of how you wear it. And it's even gone to women who have cancer and cover their hair. They're just kind of like, why is your hijab like this? And they're like, I'm not even Muslim. So I think with my generation, it is very common, but it has to do a lot more with not feeling like you fit in and feeling out of place. So some people do it out of fear. Some people do it out of like, I don't feel this connection anymore because there's no representation. We don't get some holidays off. We don't have, time already associated off during Ramadan. So a lot of people tend to just stray from it. And it could be because the society isn't very accepting of it. For instance, in Muslim countries, during Ramadan, those stores close until night. So everybody's out at night, but they'll open for a little bit. And then after the prayer, they stay closed, or they'll open during like Sahur for like things. But like over here, you can't exactly just request a whole month off. You can't, so you have to go through it. So some people decide not to fast. Some people decide not to uphold their culture. Some people are pushed into drinking more or certain substances because that's just what's promoted here. And so it's just that lack of connection that causes that. But I think as for our parents, a majority of them are very firm with their beliefs. It's kind of like God first, whatever else after, unless you're put into like serious harm.
So with that being said, how do you hold on to or stay confident and proud of your identity?
Could you repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
Oh, I said, how does she like stay confident and hold on to her identity?
This might be the most unheard answer, spite. It's all out of spite. For a big majority of the time growing up, I really felt like I didn't fit in because I wore hijab, and I would see all these girls getting to wear stuff and then moving to Texas and starting college and seeing everybody just wear what they want and being told by some people, and they never meant it in a bad way, but they would kind of encourage me to take off my hijab, or they'd encourage me to like go to a party or encourage me to do stuff. And I was like, oh, like I really want to fit in. I guess that's what I got to do. Being told that you're not like the prettiest one unless you're like these girls, it pushes you in a certain way. So it's actually just been spite. And I've always told myself, like, what's kept me confident with the hijab is no one deserves to see my hair unless I want them to. And I think it's super fun because like most people don't know if I have hair or what it looks like until they like randomly either walk in, I'm in the restroom fixing it, or I invite them over. And it's super cool just to see them surprised. Otherwise, I surround myself with people who encourage my inner beauty and they push me towards the best versions of myself. So like the Teaching and Learning Center, I learned so much there because seeing all these different women who are strong and wise and encourage me in different ways that my parents never could. And I've never felt more connected to my religion because I'll have discussions with Danielle and with Sarah and Sabika, who joined us, and she's also hijab Muslim. And I've never felt more connected because I was talking to her and I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, this is the second hijab I've seen on campus. And I feel strong because I see how these women carry themselves and how confident they are with what they do and how confident they are with their spirituality, with their faith. And other than that, it's the people that I meet, the people who I see that they're lost because they don't have something to hold on to, something to guide them or something. And for me, Islam has always been that thing, regardless of what a lot of experiences where this world tells me. I know at the end of the day, I do believe in Allah, and I know that who I am as a person is not defined by how much I follow God, but how I prove myself. For me, that means kindness. It means peace. It means submission. It means sincerity. And I live by the prophet peace be upon him. When he was sick, there's this woman who would just throw trash at him every time he walked. And when she got sick, he went and he brought her soup, and he came to her. And she was physically abusive. Somebody threw trash at me, I would bring soup. But what I do is I carry myself in the sense of I'm going to love, but I will put my boundaries and I'll put my guidelines. If you disrespect me, I will treat you in the most kindest way, but I'll remove myself in that scenario. I'm not gonna let you walk all over me. As for hijab, it's a work in progress. It's going to continue being a work in progress. And I think with how the world is right now and with how many more hijabis are being willing to speak up on issues, the connectivity, standing up for one another, I think it's just gonna get stronger for us.
But when I first walked into the room today for your lecture, what I noticed about you is you looked at me and said hi. I mean, there's nothing more that I could add than that. And then the whole world opens up for possibility. It's just, but you just look at me and said hi.
Thank you for, I really love like conversations like this that like, you know, growing up in a different, you know, culture and environment, like it shows how we can be allies for each other and the allyship for being more informed and, you know, having open conversations about, you know, different perspectives. It's so helpful and connecting for all of us to have these kinds of conversations and to be able to, you know, support you and support each other in, you know, all of these ideals. So I really appreciate your presentation today.
Are there any questions in the chat just in case?
I didn't see anything.
I didn't see any great info. We got some feedback.
Should be said.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So is it, so it's not necessarily, and this is my interpretation, my misinterpretation, I guess, it's not necessarily an intimacy thing. It could be some people you feel comfortable with, whether they're male or female, does that? Okay, all right, sorry, okay, yeah. Correct me, please.
Based on Islamic rules and ideations, the only people allowed to see your hair are women, boys under the age of puberty, nephews, well, all women, and then for boys, it's boys under the age of puberty, your nephews, your grandchildren, your sons, your brothers, blood relatives, like grandfather, father, uncle, and then father-in-law is essentially people here. And there will be some people who might be more comfortable sharing with others, or they're not as like strict with it. And once again, it's something that's just such a wide variety of people's own comfort that I know for me, it's just like, you know, my brothers, my father, my this, when I get married, my husband. But otherwise, the only like big demographic people like to see a woman.
Right.
As someone you went here as a community college student, you went to a four-year institution, what do you think we can do better here to be inclusive and to not, you know, not make you feel like you don't belong or you don't fit here?
I think me personally, it would have been really nice during Ramadan to have teachers that are just like super understanding. It's just like, hey, I will be super hungry and thirsty, so I'll be asleep in your class, or allowing, you know, time for them to take their exam, understanding that like the Eid comes and they don't know the day. Unfortunately, with the Eid, it's based on the moon, and so it's like one of these 3 days I will be gone. I think being more understanding with that, being more understanding with having more like access to prayer rooms. I know that's something I wanted to start, which is like an MSA where students can have a room that they go to pray in, students can have a room that they go to relax in. I know for hijabis, especially if you're commuting or if you're staying here a long time, it gets really hard. And having to just like sit in the bathroom to like take off your hijab for a bit and breathe can be just very tiring.
I was just gonna add, we do have a student life. I can send you the information to disseminate, but they just started publicizing their prayer meditation. Exists on campus. So
Now that you're gone, it's
Of course. I really appreciate that feedback. 'cause that's-
Yeah.
Do you want to give some feedback? If they only let hijabi here. And I want you to have some sort of feedback as well.
Honestly, because I go to UH too, so I feel like honestly I had a great time at Lone Star. I feel like if anything, the teachers here, because it's smaller, they're like been so understanding. Like my teachers actually respond to my emails, so like I'm like UH, so it's like, and the parking's free, so I don't know.
No, seriously.
I don't know. Like
Glad
it's
to know
been,
we're doing good.
Yeah.
I've like, no, it's been amazing at Lone Star. I think maybe a prayer room would be nice, but other than that, like I'd love to.
Yeah, no, Lone Star is really great.
No, I came like from university to here and I was like, so where do I pay for the parking? Like it was so nice.
That and the campus is being big. I remember my biggest motivation to go to class was whether it's hot or not. And if it was hot and it was halfway across campus, I was like, I guess I don't need to go today. And I would just stay. I was like, me walking from here to 20 minutes in this hijab, I will be a fool. And I remember the AC had died in the psych building one day. And my friend told me, she's like, it's 90 degrees. I was like, yeah, I'm not coming. FaceTime me in class. And they had like one fan circulating. I was like, I would have passed out in that class. I think there's just so many ways. I feel like if there was the ability, not hijab, to just speak up, kind of have that sort of open discussion, a group for them to just come and talk. I feel like it helps because then they can share tips or advice and people who are curious. I remember in honors college, when we were doing this competition, I had brought extra hijabs because I was like switching them off so I could confuse people. And I had one of my friends wear a hijab. She was not Muslim, she's amazing, and she put the hijab on to pretend to be me since we were riddle and people were chasing her and me, but they would like think she was me. But I remember some other girls wanted to try the hijab on, and it was super funny because people would walk by and they'd see like a girl in t-shirts and shorts, like with the hijab perfectly on. They were like so confused, and I was like, "Oh, I'm doing this wrong." They're probably gonna be like, "That's the new norm." But I think it's fun. I know at UH they once had this thing where they were just like, they had like all these hijabs for people to try on, and they were just like showing them different styles. They were giving them out, and I feel like that would be super nice, like some sort of like event where you could have people talk about it, because although hijab is like very commonly seen with Muslim women, you don't have to be Muslim to wear it. I know that there's a difference between like appropriation, or if you try to wear like a very revealing thing and you put it on, it can be seen as very bad. Or if you like take it on and off and on and off like for fun, it can seem very bad. Or if you try to present yourself as a hijabi, but you're not actually one and you're just like misconstruing it, that can be wrong. But I feel like an event where people could like stop by, specifically women, and they could just try one on, they could see what it's like, would be super fun, super engaging. And it could be something that like a bunch of other hijabis or just Muslim women or women in general kind of organize it. We have all these different cool hijabs, they get to try it on, they get to talk about it, and they see how they feel.
I'm sorry, you already explained this, but so I ignorantly thought the hijab, you just said hijabi, so an individual is considered a hijabi?
Yes.
So what does that mean?
Like let's say it's like an Arabic term in a sense of like, I don't know how to say it, but like,
I don't know, because it's just like, I guess it's just what we.
yeah, it's just
call
kind of
aware.
Like a groupie, right? Like
It's just
kind of a group
aware,
of people.
aware.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like part of the group. So like, hijab
Yeah.
is the thing, the shawl could be the thing, hijabi is the person wearing it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
You talked about dealing with the heat here. How is it dealt with in the Middle East? What is the different, like,
Oh, it's
you have to
still
go to a
hot.
class, or you don't have to go to a class because of the air conditioner out and no fan and everything else?
Oh no, don't get me wrong, it's still hot. I remember I used to go there, it's like 125 degrees and the AC is like not working. I think the heat is what made me funny because it burned a lot of my brain cells. But I mean, over there for some parts, it's dry heat, it's not humid heat. So like, in all honesty, I remember working there and it was like 120 degrees and I'd be wearing layers. Like, yeah, I'd be melting and it would be hot. But like over here, walking in the humidity, all your water is just sucked out of you. And so you're walking and you get there, you're just shriveled up, trying to like,
During Ramadan, not being able to drink.
yeah, it reduces it a lot significantly. And essentially with Ramadan in general, based on your schedule, based on this, most people tend to like stay up at night so they can eat, they can do all this. So you might deal with students who are sleep deprived. You might deal with students who are just really thirsty or really sleepy. I will say that Islamically, when a woman is on her cycle, she doesn't have to fast. So it can be very like controversial. Sometimes people will like try to just sneak off to eat because they don't want people going like, well, why aren't you fasting? But I think just kind of having that ability for people to come up to you and just mention that like, okay, hey, if you're fasting this year, come talk to me, come tell me, so I can work around your schedule sort of thing. Whether it's like, I'll let you take this exam at another time, or, you know, you can come later. I know campus is usually open until 8, I believe, like the testing center, 6, 7, 8, one of those. Ramadan moves up as we go throughout the years. And so like this year, it's gonna be like March, April. So that's gonna be around midterms, around that sort of stuff. The weather won't be as bad and time will still kind of like end pretty slowly because they break their fast after sunset. And so if you have the possibility to let a student take their exam after sunset, where they eat and where they nourish themselves, or, you know, something where they can take their exam ahead of time, take their exam after, something that works best with them, because you're really not you when you're hungry, you're thirsty, you might not do as well. I know for me, I was like super hungry and super thirsty when I was taking my exam. I was just circling letters. I would just read a prayer over each like question, and wherever it stopped, that was the answer.
No,
So I was just gonna say, and Joshua, would you mind putting this in the chat? The quiet reflection room is called for praying, meditating, reflecting, no talking aloud. It's in Case building here on campus, 200 each. Case 200 each. And like regular hours, basically Monday through Thursday, 8:30 a.m. to 5:45 p.m. So 8:30 a.m. to 5:45 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays, 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Fridays.
I think I came up with a suggestion. I know how like Lone Star likes to do Thanksgiving things and Christmas things as like a group. I feel like if you wanted to arrange like campfire night, first of all, she would be so properly fed with like the best foods, but it'd be super fun because then you'd have like a bunch of students who live near campus, or maybe they traveled here, and everybody gets to like bring potluck sort of thing, and then they sit and they have iftar. And there's something about that sense of community. I remember growing up in mosques, we'd have like open shake night where anybody could come in. And so you'd see these people who've been fasting all day. And I remember being one of the volunteers. We make sure we hand out the food first before we even sit down. And so seeing that sort of thing, seeing that sort of sense of community, the giving, and I'm at Aheen, and around this time, you have people who will just open their houses. They will give, they're just extremely generous. And so I feel like it would be a very, very fun night to kind of have this sort of thing, so more people could learn about Ramadan, more people could learn about it, because I've grown up with a lot of people who tell me like, oh, I intermittent fast, or like I do this thing where I don't eat for the day, I just drink water. I'm like, oh my God, you're like this close to Ramadan, you're almost there. But I feel like it'd be a very encouraging and fun night for Muslim students to kind of connect and feel connected with Lone Star. And then also for other students who are curious to learn and to eat. Eating is good.
I think giving people information, like from my first question, who's doing this to you? I won't say that I'm necessarily naive, but I just have not been exposed to a number of things. I'm just a middle of the road type person, never far left, far right, or anything else. And it's just go along, get along. If I'm pushing a rock up a hill, doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter who you hold hands with, doesn't matter who you pray to, are you helping push the rock? And in some ways, I've been fortunate not to witness the bad, but I feel now hearing about it is like, no, that is wrong, it needs to be stopped. And doing this today has given me so much more. You're talking about the prayer room and stuff like that. It just thought that maybe have a Ramadan day where tell me what time it starts, like I can pig out more. But then to not eat or drink until that and just to be encouraged to learn what you're going through. And, you know, and with you in this, but with everybody in all kinds of things. And it's just, I can't fear and hate when I'm better educated. And, you know, it removes the scaredness and things like that. I'm just assuming that, you know, people are scared by what they don't know. You know, fear and hate comes into that. So again, thank you so much for thinking this up and presenting.
Janine just said there was a Muslim student organization at CF a while back.
Yeah, it was like way back, because I remember I wanted to start one back in like 2018, and funny enough, Sabika was the first one I tried to start it with, but then I was about to graduate, and you needed like a certain amount of people for the petition, and I never got to it because I was already like leaving. And I feel like even if it's something where it's specific people, not necessarily just a group, but if they were to like, contact student life and the diversity community, to like, hey, we want to set this up and let's see if there's some volunteers and see if this, like, so people who do want to experience it, there should be like a little group chat where it's like, we're starting Ramadan, wake up. And it's funny because when you fast the whole month, you go from like the beginning where everybody wakes up, eats, you know, like eats good, like how you have like the middle of the month where you wake up, you have like cereal next to your bed, and then you have like the last towards the month where you're just drinking water and you're like, okay, let's go. But I feel like it'd be really nice and really engaging because it would also encourage community members, so parents of like these students to kind of have a sort of connection. Like they could come into and they could, you know, speak on their culture, they can speak on their heritage, what they've learned. There's a lot of students here who their parents came here as immigrants. And in Cyprus, there's not that many mosques and not that many like sort of communication settings. Because I feel like if we did that, we had like this thing, like Eid, celebrating Eid as a group would be so much fun because everybody dresses up like it's the Met Gala and people, you know, people give money, people give presents. There's like sweets and desserts because it's the first day after everything. There is a community-led prayer. And so I think it would just be really nice if Lone Star was open to more inclusive faith-based things. That way, like if somebody wants to like speak to somebody for Lone Star, they're like, hey, we want to lead Eid prayer here. So that way people in Cyprus don't have to drive 40 minutes and park their cars on grass. And it could be like a Cyprus event. And then it could be something where even open faith people can come see it. They could come listen to these lectures. They can just come here. And it would be more of a like just information thing, but also a connection thing. Something I've realized in those services, there's so many people who tell me that I'm like the first hijabi they met. And as great as that is, it puts a lot of weight to like have to uphold yourself because you can't have a bad day. You can't hold a certain faith because then I'm just immediately going to be shuffled next to like, oh, they're quiet. Oh, they're rude. Oh, do this. So I feel like if it's more open where you commonly see these things, you commonly have this thing, it'll be less of like curiosity questions and more of like, no, I know that. I just saw this, or like I saw this thing and I think you'd like it. But that just the kind of connection would be very important.
So I know, like, I feel like recently there's been like more representation because like our religion is like a lot of people. Like there's people that are Hispanic and also Muslim and Arab and Muslim or like Pakistani and Muslim. Like it's a wide range, and I feel like more in the past and more recently it's always just like Arab Muslim, and like so people get surprised like if you're from somewhere else or if you're Hispanic and you're also like wearing the hijab. So how do you think Muslims could get more representation? Because like kind of like you said, when you're the only hijabi, it's like, well, now every hijabi is gonna be like Amena. Like that's that's the only person.
I think these community events where people can come, because I remember once being surprised by this girl who I was telling her I found some halal authentic Mexican food. I was super excited, and she's like, it's not authentic then if it's halal. I was like, I mean, just because it doesn't have pork doesn't diminish the fact that a Mexican family has the business and made it. But, okay. I feel like things like that where people can come up and that like that way if they know there's like a community based event and it's open for Hispanic Muslims, Pakistani Muslims, Arab Muslims, all this, you'd actually be surprised to find out a majority of Muslims are not actually Arab. It's just because of Arabic being the language of Islam, a lot of people tend to associate that. And that's why a lot of like Christian Arabs will kind of get pulled in. So they're like, oh my God, you're Arab, why aren't you wearing hijab? And they'll be like, I'm Christian. And so I think if we open that space and we have it where more people can talk, and we'll have people from all these different cultures and different things to speak about how they grew up, how their culture connects with it. Because I can only imagine how difficult it might be for those who come from ethnicities or cultures where maybe alcohol is a big part, or maybe pork is a very big part. How have they made that shift? How have they dealt with, other family members being this way? Whereas, Arab communities, it's not very common to have pork or to drink or this. And so I feel like that will also open the space to discuss these things. And for my generation specifically, for being honest, a lot of people go through these things. A lot of people deal with all types of substances and things. And some people take off the hijab, some people keep it on, some people go through all this. And if we have a space where they can come and they can talk and they're not afraid to be judged, it's something led by a majority of people around, like my generation, where they're just like, hey, I've experienced that too. I grew up thinking this way, and this is how I stitch them. Or, I grew up with everybody doing this around me, and this is how I deal with it. I feel like it's the same way how people saw my fire. There was a fire about hey, come learn about this. Free food. And or, do you know somebody who'd be interested in this? And it's just open to the community, because we might not have a lot of people here in Cyprus, but we might have people from different cities, and they were looking for this connection. They're looking for this place. And free parking is always great, so we get a lot of people.
I just had I don't know if it's a question, it's more of a comment or an observation. In your presentation, you were talking about modesty, and I really appreciated how you expanded modesty to other cultures, and how we in the Mexican culture, my grandmother, she always had her rebozo on her. That's just what she did. You didn't need to go outside uncovered. And probably she's cold at it. But I really liked your idea of modesty, and I just kind of wanted to ask you, right now, especially being in Western culture, and maybe thinking about the next generation, thinking about my daughter. She's 17. She came to me. She's doing tennis, and she came to me and said that there are certain girls who get pulled to the side because their shorts are too short, or their shirts have too much cleavage. But it's really associated with their body type. They're just bigger, and so it looks like it's not being modest. Or you have a girl who's maybe more slender, who is then wearing maybe the same length, but it looks modest, so they don't get, sent to the principal's office or whatever. And then you have boys in the track who are running with their shirts off. And so she comes to me and she's like, Mom, that's so unfair. And I don't know what to answer to that. I don't know if there's an answer that I can give her, other than I think that you're challenging, your presentation is challenging us to view modesty, or at least expand on it, or really question what we believe and why we view it the way we do. And so I just want to say that I appreciate that piece of the conversation. I think it's very relevant. And I think it should be challenging us to really see women and men, like you said, at the same standard. And then really question why we feel and think the way that we do.
So unfortunately, that's something that's very hard to change, because modesty has been associated with purity. It's a very wrong term. For hijabis, for everybody, especially for women. They associate your purity with how much you have covered, what you're leaving for the imagination, where you're doing this. Unfortunately, we're at a time where everything that women do is sexualized, from what you wear to your body type to this, for little children. Because little girls who wear what's sold at stores, like the short things, people will be like, oh, that's your daughter, and she put some leggings under her dress. It's a child kid should be comfortable. If you take your little 2-year-old son or your 2-year-old daughter to the beach and they're just wearing their little swim diapers, there shouldn't be an issue, because it's once again a child. When bodies start developing on certain things, I feel like there needs to be a very big push on, obviously you wear what you're comfortable, you wear what's not going to put you at risk or at harm. And then whether people decide to sexualize you or not, unfortunately, it's not going to change. Coming from a hijabi who's fully covered up, there are so many encounters I've had where I've been sexualized. Hijabis are sexualized. because we're considered pure. We're considered this sort of like this mystery that people want, and that like degrades the whole concept of it. That for girls, when they have different body types, they have different things, and the way that schools, this world kind of is they put that responsibility on girls when it shouldn't. If a girl is wearing something that could distract a male teacher or somebody, that is the adult's responsibility to not be that way. There should be things that mandate that. If any sort of adult, male or female, has an issue with a child's body, that should be questioned, not the child, because the child can't really control what they do. And so it is very unfortunate seeing that like guys can still walk around shirtless and all this stuff. And that's because they aren't as sexualized open, or they aren't seen as objects. So for instance, as a hijabi, I don't know if you'll relate, but I grew up always hearing the like, do you want an uncovered lollipop because flies go there, or do you want the covered lollipop? And it was so dumb because I was just like, I think flies will also go to that one with the golden heaven. Doesn't make sense. Also, I'm not food.
I think, oh yeah, back to, since you asked me, I guess, I think that's true, like people always, how people react, like they kind of focus on people's reaction to you or how people are gonna treat you, but that's not about modesty, it's for yourself first and it's for identity. Like it entails a lot of things, like it's not for you.
It really isn't for other people, and that's why sexualization for women has gone so far to colors. Wearing red. People will say that you're too young to wear red, which is in some cultures a lucky color. People will tell you that you're too young to wear like a certain dress or do your hair a certain way or this sort of thing. And that stems down to so many things from like your cultures, your ethnicity, your race, where you can be seen older for how your body matures, even if you're very young. So I started wearing a hijab when I was 9, and a lot of people considered me a woman. I was a child. I was literally a small child who didn't know left and right. And I still don't, but like, it's seeing that responsibility placed on young women, placed on women everywhere is extremely unfortunate. It's not something you grow out of, because when you look at the statistics, you see that women of all ages, girls of all ages, boys, they go through very unfortunate things. And I feel like in those scenarios, if I was to talk to your daughter, I'd tell her, unfortunately, we're not going to see a very big change, but does that mean that she should stay silent or allow that to happen? No. Like if she sees something going wrong and she feels comfortable enough to speak up, she can. Change doesn't happen immediately. Change doesn't happen one by one. But as long as she's comfortable with what she wears, how she wears it, she's holding her own self to her level of respect, to her level of faith, her level of safety. Regardless of what people say, women are going to be sexualized no matter what, unfortunately. An unfortunate joke I like to say is I could literally wear a trash bag, a trash bag, and there would still be some people who were intrigued by that. And it's unfortunate because like wearing your abayas, I remember when I'd walk in the Middle East, sometimes I'd wear my abayas and some guys would just try to get a look. I was like, I'm fully covered, go away. So it's a lose-lose, the double-edged sword, you can't win. And so
just encourage her to just
encourage her to stay, yeah, speak her voice, stay safe. If she ever sees, because especially with media right now, there are a lot of people pointing out certain teachers, certain things who have been known to like be a certain way with girls. Encourage that sort of like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Now, regardless on what your levels of modesty may be. So for instance, you know, my mom, me, like we have to fully cover it up. Now, even if I were to wear short shorts in this, I'm not asking for anything. It's not my fault, apparently, if somebody can't control their urges. Think of it as like a dog. If a dog bites you for walking the street, they put the dog down. Because you're walking the street. You could be making faces at that dog, you can be making that dog mad, but if it bites you, that dog's in the wrong. The owner's in the wrong. And so, unfortunately, it's been flipped where the narrative of responsibility has been pushed on women and girls to uphold some sort of unreachable level. And because you can't reach it, you can't win. So as long as she's safe, as long as she feels comfortable, as long as, you know, she trusts you, she trusts this thing, she can come to you when it comes to like, if the teacher that's calling them out is a male or is this, they could speak on it. Even if it's a female, they can talk about like, well, why are you pointing this out? Is this hurting anybody? It's the same exact clothing. I can't exactly chop my body off or like tape it. It's how I was made. If you want to change it, then change it for everybody else. It can't just be because of how I was born. It is because it's for something you can't control. And having them wear something different might alter their athletic abilities, it might alter their comfort levels, and that inherently just brings them down. And so I think as long as people just have that trusting ability, they know who to go to, they know who to speak, and they know when to call things out. And with media and how it is right now, there's a lot of people who won't stay quiet for these things. They won't just allow it to happen. Well, thank you guys so much.